Hello everybody, here I am, Elena Berman with Let's Talk. And today we have a very interesting guest because we are located in Los Angeles, California, which is famous not only for its Hollywood movies, but also for its many interesting businesses. Obviously, the more people in activity in businesses, they need more disputes. And of course, they need somebody who would resolve their situations. And this is where lawyers appear. Despite that fact that a lot of lawyers in Los Angeles, we have a difficult time to find the right one. And it is difficult, the same as to find a good husband and wife. Going through my 10 years divorce, I talked about 50 lawyers, and I figured out that maybe 20% are real professionals. And even this town, Los Angeles, number 6 in city of 100 best cities for lawyers, really difficult to find the right person. Anyway, I found the right one. So finally, from digging so many years, I found the person who meets those professional requirements. And I'm glad to introduce you today, my guest, Peter Hoffman.
Hi, Elena.
Hi, thank you for finding the time for us today. I know you're super busy. And I would love to mention one more thing, that this interview will be very interesting for those who would like to take advantage of some advices, because Peter charges about $1,000 an hour for his consultation. And today we will talk about relationship between clients and attorney and courthouse empire, what's going on inside of that interesting house. And of course, we will talk about relationship between lawyers and relevant authorities. So tell us about what kind of attorney are you, what cases you usually take, and is it normal that one attorney can handle many different departments?
Yes, I mean, I am, as you know, not practicing right now. I just work as a consultant. But in the 40 years or so that I was practicing, you tend to have specialization as a lawyer. And some specialize in things in court. They're called litigators. And they're procedural specialists usually. They don't often know that much about the particular dispute. They're just a specialist in the way it gets resolved, as you say, in this strange thing called courts. Most of my career has been doing transactional work, financing, particularly in the motion picture and the record business, and artist contracts and artist relations. And then for many years, I was an executive in the film business, making movies and distributing those movies. So I know a lot about the contract and rights issues in the film business, and as a specialty, me and a whole bunch of lawyers in the so-called entertainment community do that kind of work. But that is also broader as well in finance and other things.
Wonderful. How do you define it as a good attorney?
One of the best lawyers in town, a guy named Kenny Ziffrin, told me when I first started practicing law, the most important thing for a lawyer is to be ahead of the client. That is, to think of what the client hasn't thought of. If the client's coming to you and say, what about this, and you haven't thought of it, then you're behind the client, and that's not good. So you can usually tell a good lawyer is one that's thought of something that you haven't thought of, or as you've got a problem and they're already thinking about what they can do about it. And so that's usually the most important thing, is that they're ahead of you in the thinking about it.
So you're quick. Like you figured out what client wants from you.
Yeah, that's right. And a good lawyer will start by understanding the client's objectives, trying to get an idea of who the client is, what they're trying to achieve. Because there's the law, and then there's what the client really wants. And oftentimes those two don't go together. And particularly because our system of law, here in America, lawyers are like high priests. And the problem is that a lot of those high priests have their own world. So many of us think we know the law. I went to the Yale Law School, one of the best law schools in the country. I think I know a lot about the law, but what matters is often that guy in a robe or that woman in a robe and they may know very little about the law. Or they may know the law, but they don't care. They want to just go ahead and do what they want to do. And so trying to understand what judges will do is part of what you have to help a client understand. And so trying to understand what your risks are in dealing with the legal system and what your objectives are. And a good lawyer will start with those kinds of things so the client is thinking clearly. They're thinking clearly ahead of what they need to do, and they're thinking clearly about what they can realistically achieve and the risks of getting there. The best thing for a client is when they feel comfortable that they understand what's happening to them. If they don't understand what's happening to them and they get fearful or nervous, then the lawyer isn't doing his job. So we can call it bedside manner like with a doctor, but it's not that. It's really a way of trying to help be an interpreter for an individual who gets into a legal system or something where law matters, and then helping them understand it so they're comfortable. And sometimes you have to tell them your objective you can't get, but it's better the client understands that, or understands that a particular objective is very hard to get.
Yeah.
And at least then their expectations are in line with what's going to happen. Another huge problem is when lawyers give the client unreasonable expectations of what can happen. Then there's a very disappointing situation. So those are, what I'll call the personality or the judgment elements about being a lawyer. Now, of course, there's also, being good at the law, knowing what you need to do.
And by
that's
the way,
also an important thing, but the clients often don't know how to judge those things, frankly.
That's right. This is my next question. How the client who see person first time, and of course lawyer wearing the nice suit, nice clothes, they know what to say. In my opinion, it looks like they are more discovering psychology. They study psychology more than law because they want to allure the client. They want to be as client.
Well,
literally.
Again, I think the first thing is for the client to feel comfortable that the lawyer has understood their problem and understands their objective and is explaining things to them so that they feel comfortable, they understand what they're getting into. But usually a client can judge, a lawyer, whether they're good at what they're doing by talking to them and reading what they write. Because lawyers, we always write things down. We write it in briefs, we write it in contracts. And I encourage every lawyer, every client, to read what their lawyer writes. A lot of times clients don't want to do that. Oh, it's too complicated, it's legal, the contract, that's complicated. That's why I hire you to do that. No. There's a famous statement that Bill Cosby, who was now sort of considered a bad guy, but for a long time he was considered a great guy. And he gave some very good advice to Oprah Winfrey when she was still starting to really make money. And he said, never be too busy to read your own bank statements and read your own contracts. And it's still very good advice. And you'll usually tell because you can ask questions. Now, you as a client may not understand the law, but you can understand simple things. You can say, well, what about this and what about that? And if the lawyer's good, they'll have good answers for you. They'll have answers that make sense. And people can tell when the lawyer's fumbling around and doesn't really know, or kind of just sort of guessing or taking shots at what it might be. If you have an artist, say an actor, and they are worried about what's going to happen to them on set and what things they need, then a lawyer who knows what he's doing is going to say, well, I'm going to make sure you have a double banger, or at least a single star trailer. I'm going to make sure you have your hair makeup person. You can go down a list. I need that. I need that. I need that. That's the kind of thing that, simple questions can often get the right answers, even in complicated matters. So don't be afraid to ask and read whatever they give you. It's worth it.
Don't be afraid and read. This means don't be lazy. Biggest misconception about attorneys are that they have no moral compass. And I experience that. This is true. But how we can avoid that? Because we don't have a time to go through that, figure it out that, and then find another attorney. How we can see this right away? Is it possible?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is your own moral compass. You don't want your lawyer telling you to do things that you know are wrong. But usually the problem I find is that a client thinks that the lawyer that they're against, the opposing lawyer, is the one that is taking advantage of the system and lying. Most clients believe, particularly in litigation, that the lawyers for the other side are liars. Now, sometimes they are, but sometimes they're just repeating the lies of their client. But dishonesty with lawyers in both negotiations and in litigation is a huge problem. You can call it immoral, but it's all about what I call instrumental thinking. That is, okay, I got to get from A to C, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And part of the problem we have in the world, particularly with courts, is lies work. We think lying will catch up with you, maybe, ultimately, but a lot of times lying works. And, I've been the victim of it. Many people have. I think I know as much about it as anybody, but you have, particularly in this huge battle I had down in New Orleans, it's had all this aggravation in my life. We had prosecutors that just lied through their teeth. Now, we know they lied.
Tell them more about this. What happened?
Well, the situation down in New Orleans can be very political, and the film business was very political. There was a tax credit program that was very good. It brought almost $2 billion worth of business to the state, but a lot of people didn't like it. Perhaps they weren't benefiting. Perhaps they think everybody in Hollywood is stealing. It's if you give a benefit to the oil business, and that's good for the oil business. Give a benefit to the Hollywood, then those thieves in Hollywood are taking our money, right? And so there was a lot of politics in it. And these prosecutors wanted to end the program, and so they sort of picked my partner and I as the people to do that. And in order to do that, they had to lie. Now, we know they've lied now. We have them proof that they got people to say things on the stand that were lies. We now have the proof that they didn't give us, where those same witnesses said the exact opposite, the thing we needed them to say in writing. And now we know that they lied, but they can win with lying. So it's a very tough part of our legal system, and includes negotiation too, because people lie in negotiation all the time.
It's horrible.
It is.
You just said horrible thing. You said they can win with lie.
They can.
This means our system, we cannot rely.
Every system is imperfect. Winston Churchill said something famous about democracy. He said, democracy is a very bad form of government. It's just that all the others are so much worse. So our legal system is bad, and terrible things can happen, but I don't know what's better. I don't know what's... So, and the biggest problem with the system is that, as you say, people that are fundamentally dishonest can, and because they think they can properly achieve an objective that they think is a good thing, either for themselves or their clients, that it's okay if you can get away with it. And if you don't get away with it, then you move on. We often say in Hollywood that, an agent lies when they says hello, all right? There was a book, actually, by a well-known producer. It was called Hello, He Lied. And there are a lot of agents that lie for a living. All right. And then they get caught and they smile and they move right on because, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. It's
professional.
Partly it's life, partly we're competitive, partly there's money involved, and it happens. That's why you need good lawyers, and that's why you need to be a good client. You need to think hard. You need to be careful, and you have to accept the fact that there's times when unjust and bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, I like this joke. For example, somebody said, "Did you hear they're using lawyers in lab experiments instead of rats? It seems there are an excess of lawyers. The scientists don't get attached to them like they did to rats. And there is some things a rat just would not do."
Yeah, I've heard that. I have another joke that we often tell about lawyers. You have a lawyer, a doctor, and an accountant are on a boat, and they're all chatting up the beautiful girl, and she slips and falls into the ocean. And then they see a shark swimming around. And so, of course, the accountant's the first to say, "Oh, I'll take care of it." He jumps in, swims over there, shark gobbles him up. Then the doctor says, "Well, I can handle this." He jumps in the water, tries to swim to her. The shark gobbles him up. And the lawyer said, "I guess I'm going to have to take care of this." So he jumps in the water, swims over there, rescues the lady, comes back, and they all come around and say, "Well, what happened? Why didn't you get eaten by the shark? What happened?" He said, "Just professional courtesy."
That's right. I swim with sharks. This is what they say.
So that's why you need a lawyer who's tough. I call it sometimes in basketball, as you use your elbows under in order to get the rebound. You've got to use your elbows. Sometimes you do. Sometimes in negotiations you have to be tough, you have to be emotional, you have to take stands. There's a certain drama to some of this stuff. There's drama in court. So, there's just a scene that
it's like a theater.
Yeah, it's a theater. And it's all things that shouldn't happen in a perfect world, but we're not in a perfect world.
That's right. There is ideal world and perfect world, and we're usually in the real one.
Yeah, we're in the real one.
And is it true? Actually, it is true, but how you will get that league? Because I know that attorney, they separate themselves. It's like, I'm with sharks, it's my pool, and those are others, they're like small attorneys. And to get to those, they are not only charging huge money, they are really know what they're doing. Is it any access to them? Because if you will open internet, it's everybody's like, I'm the best, I'm aggressive, it's already kind of funny.
Well, it's usually best if you find a lawyer through a recommendation of a friend, just like with a doctor, somebody who's had an experience with them so they know, somebody you trust. But usually if you have the right kind of business and the right kind of transaction, then you can go to top lawyers and they'll find time. There's there's good law firms, there's other people that are well known in the business. Usually finding a good lawyer is not the issue. It's having a good relationship with them and paying them. Lawyers, a lot of times lawyers charge by the hour. And as somebody once said to me, that's paying them for their incompetence, right? Takes more time. You hire Bill, and then they can put 3 lawyers on it when 1 lawyer can do it. And so suddenly you have a gigantic bill, and you don't see the result. Mm-hmm. That is a common problem. Mm-hmm. But again, clients, if they're watching it, they can control that, and they can make sure that they're dealing with somebody that is that they know what's being done. They can see the work product, and they're comfortable with that person. A relationship with a lawyer is like a relationship with a doctor or with a psychiatrist. You want to have somebody that you trust and that you feel cares about you as a person, so that they'll want to treat you right. It's not just how much money am I going to get out of them until I fire them. Always a client should be first and foremost making a personal judgment about the individual.
It's a wonderful statement, but from my experience, it was not like that all the time. And by the way, I explain in a lot of situations, personally with me and with other people in my book, 3 things you should know before divorce, even if you are happily married. So if you will have time, you will know a lot of interesting things. And sometimes attorney take advantage and they don't disclose. It's called paperwork. They just taken the money and they show like they did work which is they never did, because they know how it sound like, and they will present for you the bill where you will take a look, oh wow, so much work been done. So how the person can control that?
Oftentimes it's good to have a discussion in advance with the lawyer when you have a transaction and say, here's what I need done. Tell me what you think is going to cost, and get some sense of what your markers are. Sometimes they can't entirely predict because it may be dependent on what happens in court, what happens with the other side. So you can't say to an nth degree, but you can have guideposts. All right. So if I want to do this motion, it's going to take so many hours. Then you can have a discussion. You have a sense of it. So you have a clear expectation. And similarly, if they say that and then it turns out to be a lot more, you can say, wait a second, you told me this. Why did this happen? And if it didn't, you then have a discussion with the lawyer and pay less. So you do need to be clear with the lawyer up front and get clear estimates and hold them to those estimates unless there's something important.
Oh, what to do if the attorney say, who is the attorney over here? You just sit down and relax and I will handle everything. Don't ask me any questions. So this is means
don't
you have
hire
to
that lawyer. Don't hire that lawyer.
This is what I wanted to hear. That's right. Another very interesting question. Do attorneys snitch on their clients? Do they have somewhere, organization, or they can tell on their clients something? Is it happening?
It might, but I don't think so. And that is a very serious breach of legal ethics. The lawyers all have a code of legal ethics. This is so-called the Code of Professional Responsibility, which is enacted by the state legislature and enforced by the state bar. And so if you violate that, then they will punish you. And one of those is client confidences. And you do not disclose client confidences to third parties without the client's permission. You do that, you are subject to very serious discipline. May happen. Maybe people shoot their mouths off. Maybe they can get something out of it. But if you do that, that's really like stealing the client's money, or missing a date that you have to file a thing. And I mean, that's really bad misconduct, which I'm sure it happens, but we do try to police that.
My last attorney did exactly like that, and it is a huge deal. This is what I'm explaining in my book.
Yeah.
So it is a very, very bad situation. So he's stealing the money, he's snitching, and he's lying. This is all what is wrong in one attorney. It's horrible. So another thing, is it important if attorney working as a single party, or if he will work with a group of attorneys?
Well, I tend to think it's better if the attorney, even if they're not in a firm, have other relationships, because certainly in my case, I like to bounce ideas off other lawyers, get their sense of it, get what they think. Maybe that, they see an angle on it I haven't seen. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's always better if you have a set of colleagues that you can work with. When I had my former firm, we had maybe 20 lawyers, and we would have regular lunches, and we would chat among ourselves about things that were going on. And I think that made you better lawyers to do that.
Oh, wonderful. So you have a kind of mastermind.
Well, it's a common interest in making it good for the firm.
Okay, we're already clear on the attorney. So how looks like perfect client for the attorney?
Well, that's a funny thing. Sometimes the perfect client for an attorney is one that has all kinds of problems. One of my very first important clients was a guy named Alexander Salkind, who was he was of Russian extraction, actually. They got out of Russia in the revolution, the family, and his father, Michel Salkind, went to Berlin. He did The Blue Angel and was one of the first major film producers in the 1920s. And then Alex, like a lot of the Russians, when things got bad in Germany, they all went to Paris, right? So he moved there, and then he made pictures in the 50s and 60s. And I got to know him in the mid-70s because he made the first of the Superman pictures. Mm. And so, when we started representing Alex, the executive at Warner Brothers, who I was dealing with, said to me, Alex Salkind has more problems than God. So that was good for a young lawyer. I mean, because the more problems Alex had, the better for me to do things. And a lot of the big leaps in my career were because of Alex had these unique problems, and immodestly I was able to do very, very good things for him that that people didn't think could be done. And one of them was, he had hired Marlon Brando to play Superman's father, and he had made a deal with him to pay him a share of the gross. Except the problem was that Brando's lawyer had kind of screwed up, and he didn't have a direct obligation from Warner Brothers to pay that. So the money went to Panama, and of course it never got paid to Mr. Brando.
Oh wow!
And so when they sued, they were suing for all this money. And by then, Alex had gone over budget, and the picture was, even though the picture had done a lot of business, Warner was recouping, and there was no money. And so how do we solve this problem when Alex really had no defense? And the lawyer who represented Brando had no way to say to him, hey, Marlon, we have to compromise because of this or this. He was owed the money. There's no doubt about it. And so we had to find a way to get after tax to Brando what he would have gotten, what he was entitled to, if he had paid all his taxes, but get it to him in a way where he didn't. And we did that. And it became a little bit of a cause celeb. And this happened a couple of years after I started practicing.
Oh.
That, and he had a huge problem. The Swiss revenue was after him for $40 million. And he really did have more problems than God, which we also solved that problem for him. And so that was a great thing for me. Now, not a great thing for Alex, but so a guy who's got a big transaction and lots of problems, that's the perfect client.
Big transactions. So let's talk about not my favorite place, courthouse. This is kind of empire with own rules. Did you see the movie Divorce? It's like documentary, and they explains, oh my gosh, they explains like, because family law, it is a separate from anything, and it is a little bit closed than compared to other departments. So they basically saying, you have no rights, you have no luck, and everything is set up the way, like it is a paperwork being done in courthouses, and you as a client, sometimes you can be lucky, sometimes not. But mostly, family system set up that way that it will be like shown paperwork. And it is so little pay attention to personality, because emotions, as you know, nobody counts on that. They only pay attention how much you make in money, if you have a kids, and so on. But really what stands behind the divorces in court system, they don't pay attention to that.
Well, I think it's a problem through all parts of litigation. There's a lot of times the people that are judges, as we used to say, this person makes more money as a judge than they made as a lawyer, because judges don't get much. And if you're anywhere as good as a lawyer, you're going to make 5 to 10 times as much as any judge does. So why are these people judges? And usually they're also there because of some political situation, although less so in California. But the result is that you often have truly incompetent judges, truly incompetent. And sometimes they're very emotional, and they make decisions emotionally and then try to cover it up in the guise of law. And the results are often truly terrible, terrible injustices. I've been doing this for 40 years, and both for myself and others. I mean, I've got one horror story after another that can happen in court, not just in family law matters, but in any matters. I had a client that bought a house in foreclosure, had 5 families living there illegally with no contracts, squatters, tried to get them out. Not only did they not get them out, people who had lived there for a decade without paying rent, those tenants sued them and got a judgment for $5 million because they were so unfair to them in trying to get them out. And That was upheld with the judge getting mad at the landlord. I mean, when the landlord was just trying to get the people out or get them to pay rent. It's one example. In my situation, I'm told I defrauded the state of Louisiana when the state of Louisiana owes me money. And it's not even a dispute. It's not like, oh, no, you're making that up. I have a final order of the state. They owe me $1 million too. And I defrauded them? They defrauded me. And, it's that insane. And, I had, something in the Ninth Circuit, the Federal Court of Appeal is particularly bad, in my opinion, here. We had a situation where I had a dispute over a picture we made called 9.5 Weeks 2. Some guy claimed I owed him $1 million in participations. I owed him nothing. And I win the arbitration, and they award legal fees to the other guy. Unbelievable. Completely against it. So we go to court, and I say to the judge, well, fine, we have all this, and I accept responsibility for this little part, and I win the big case, but you can't award attorney's fees. There's nothing that allows that.
So what do you do? Continue fighting, or
you
you
just
stop?
I go to the appeal, and the judge on the Court of Appeals said, oh, no, you should have objected to the award of attorney's fees at the outset before they were awarded. I mean, it's nuts. It was insane.
Yeah.
And I've seen these judges. I had a big case against Paramount, which turned out to be a very important case in the statute of limitations and copyright law on these pictures I made, and that they were not paying me. And the court, when the Ninth Circuit found in favor of Paramount, they literally made up facts, stuff that was just false. I write to them and they just ignore it. It is a terrible part of our judicial system. It's very frustrating. That's why most good lawyers warn clients about the risks of dealing with the legal system and you go into it with an awareness, and then you try to navigate it as best you can. Now, having said that, horror stories, of course, there's also cases where we've had very good results. We've had cases where, we had great results from the court. And I think ones that were not like these, crazy, but actually the correct thing being done. So it's certainly not on every case, but it's scary to go to court. It's scary because anything can happen. You know, we had a picture years ago with Mickey Rourke, and then there was a line. He said, "It's Wednesday, it's anything can happen day." And that's the way I feel in court. It's a court day, it's anything can happen day. You know, you can't believe what stuff these people and the judges and the other lawyers come up with, you know, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, notice about the judges that your life can depend on how the judge slept, what they ate, what kind of mood they came in the morning. So from so little things depends your life, which is nothing to do with what's going on in judge's life. So it's kind of pathetic. And right now technology going crazy, and it is so everywhere. And for example, we already started to do court appearance online, which is, for me, it's not comfortable because something is missing, like human part, and judge clothes himself with this mask and you don't see anything. So there is lost connection. Do you feel the same, that we losing connection? This means judgment can be even worse than it was.
For some things, it doesn't matter, like, you know, simple things. Mm-hmm. But for anything important, I agree with you. It's really important that everybody be there in person, and so that you can actually reach out on a human level. It's so easy when things are done remotely. It's one of the problems in federal court now. Almost everything is done, even before COVID, everything's done on paperwork and, you know, or you're on the telephone, and nobody is sitting there arguing and talking like human beings. And it's unfortunate. Hopefully we'll get back to more in-person things.
What about retainer? This is a big thing because in some cases people would love to see how will be performance of the attorney, and then they will retain. But sometimes, in most of the cases, attorneys say, no, you have to pay retainer first, and then I will start to work. Is it legal when they're asking you, and how much it should be?
Yes, it's legal. And the State Bar regulates it is that if they get a retainer, they have to put it in their, there's a difference between a retainer and then what's called a true retainer. All right, a true retainer is one where it's saying, I'm paying you this money just so you're here. It's not subject to time. It's not subject to what I do. You're just paying so that I'm available to you. All right, that's very rare, and most clients should say no to that if the lawyer asks for it. The classic retainer is one where they have to put it in what's called their trust account, and they can only take it out of their trust account when they've given a bill that shows that the time was worked. So it's like it's an escrow more than it is something where it's just in his personal bank account and he can spend it the way he wants. So he can only take it when he's actually done the billing, all right? And it is a common thing because you know, a lot of lawyers find that, you know, legal bills are, it's not like your utilities, your phone, which you can get cut off, right? You know, you don't pay your lawyer, nothing really happens. And most lawyers don't like to sue their clients. So the reality of it is that, you know, I've never sued a client. So, you know, sometimes you get stiffed and you just eat it. And so that's why you try to avoid that. So I consider it a completely normal thing. And the amount of the retainer should be a function, again, of discussion with the lawyer about what are you going to do? How much hours? So you have, the client has an expectation, all right, of what's going to happen. So if you have a motion in family court on something and, you know, to set spousal support, and the lawyer says, I think I can do this in 10 hours or 15 hours, and he gives you a bill for 50 hours, and, you know, you can object. You know, he shouldn't ask for a retainer based on 50 hours. He should ask for a retainer based on 10 hours, and then the billing will come after. Once he's gone through the retainer, then you can bill for more. But as with all matters, it's the client has to manage the relationship. And they have to be the kind of thing where they can talk very honestly. They can say, I don't want to pay more than this. I don't want to have a bill for more than this amount. All right. Sometimes clients are afraid to have that conversation. They shouldn't be. They should say it. And if the lawyer says, I can't do it for that, then they know. All right. And then they can make a decision. Usually it's not something to be penny wise and pound foolish about. You want to get a lawyer that does the job for you. And if you're happy with their work, you shouldn't be, complaining too much about the bill. And honestly, if it really turns out badly, then you're not going to pay. Because certainly under the law, if they don't perform the services or they don't perform them competently, then you don't owe them any money, no matter what the retainer is.
But you have to prove that they didn't perform, because here we are. He will provide you so many paperwork.
Well, it's not about the hours, it's about the results. I mean, if they didn't get a result that they should have gotten, or they didn't do things on time like they should have, then it's usually pretty straightforward.
And do we have time limit for suing them? Or?
Yes.
So if you pass that, you are
well,
lost.
I mean, it's normally 2 years after the relationship ends. So that's usually enough time. If you're upset with them and the relationship's over, then you should act. And you can act.
But they use tricky stuff. They postponed, and here we are in COVID, whole year, so the year is gone.
Yes, I mean, well, actually, COVID, you might actually get an extension. But if you fire your lawyer and you're unhappy with them and you want your money back, you should go and get it. Now, in California, there's a system of you have a right to have it arbitrated before these arbitrators. And you don't need lawyers to do that. You can just go in there and present your own case. And the lawyer has to do that if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But if you want to, the lawyer has to do that. And usually most fee disputes do get resolved that way, as long as the client wants it. All right. And usually the arbitrators are tough on the lawyers. They're not like easy on the lawyers. They're tough on the lawyers.
Oh, wonderful. At least somewhere.
Yeah, I encourage people to use that system if they're unhappy, to try and get money back.
Yeah, and don't forget, sometimes they charge in your fee if you're going through arbitration. I paid. Yeah,
there's a small fee. I mean, usually it's not much. It's a couple of $1,000s. But yes, you do have to pay a fee.
Sometimes happen that your attorney sells you out. How do you understand that? They negotiate with other party and you think that he works for you, but in reality, he tried to convince in something what will serve other party, not you.
Well, at the end of the day, the client has to stand up for themselves. They have to, if the lawyer can't do anything unless the client agrees to it. So if the lawyer's presenting something that the client doesn't like or you don't like, then you say, no, I'm not doing it. All right. And usually you go consult somebody else and say, this makes no sense. It's really important not to get talked into deals. Right. And, sometimes lawyers do press clients to do it. But my attitude is I never do that. All right. I will say, here's your risks if you don't. But I won't, make a big deal about it. You don't want to do the deal. I don't want to be the one responsible for telling you to do it. So, but some lawyers do, and they have their reasons for it. But I encourage clients, never agree to a deal if you're not comfortable with it. Just don't do it, no matter what your lawyer says.
Wonderful advice. Thank you, because lawyers are very tricky. They just forcing you so many stuff, and people who don't know, like, you're the God for me. So they do whatever what lawyers say.
Yeah, a bad thing.
Yeah, and what you would say about your relationship between attorneys? Because it looks like you are, when in court, you can see obviously they hate each other and they're really working like parties with different interests. But sometimes you see when they playing whole role together. So they already negotiated behind the scene and they like pretending like they working for different parties, but in reality they working for their interest.
Well, I mean, again, that's part of the judgment you're making with the person you've chosen, that you don't want to have somebody that you don't feel is 100% on your side. And that doesn't mean that the lawyer's telling you that everything you want is correct and that's the way it should be, because what do you want a lawyer also to tell you? No, I don't think you can achieve that, or no, that's not what you should be doing, or that's unreasonable. It's appropriate for a lawyer to say those kinds of things. But yes, sometimes lawyers are lazy, or they've got to deal with the other side, or they just want to get rid of it. But it's always at the end of the day the client's decision. And I think the important thing is what you said. The fact that the lawyer says it is nothing in the weight of things. It's only if the lawyer says something that makes sense to the client, that they understand, that they, okay, I get it, I realize that, and I accept that. But don't just do anything because the lawyer tells you to do it. That is a bad thing. And it's bad if lawyers do it, but it's bad if the client accepts it.
Yeah, wonderful point. I wonder if listeners will understand. So power in you, not in lawyers. Doesn't matter what they say, but we appreciate for good lawyers because
Well, with a good client, if I, first of all, I'm ahead of them, as I say, I can think of something I haven't thought of. So that, like we're working on this picture in Vegas now, and we're working on one particular way in which all the money's going to be distributed. And, the client's saying, oh my God, no, this. And I said, Gino, you missed this. You didn't understand this. This is what's going to happen. This is why we did it this way. This is why it's protecting you. And he said, okay, now I get it. All right. That's what you want. But he comes out of it only if he's comfortable. He's particularly a client that if he's not comfortable, he is not going along with it, right? And if the lawyer says things, and I think I have, that I've not only told him what he wanted, but I also told him that he is going to be better off doing it this way, then that's what, and a client knows that, they should use their own judgment. And then when they hear, yes, I like what the lawyer's saying, that's actually helping me, then that's good.
Yeah, I would do correction. You're right. It is like a marriage. It's teamwork. It's not who is who. Like a teamwork is the best. It's teamwork,
but it's the client has to decide. And if the client is not comfortable, a good lawyer does not want to proceed. You don't want to talk the client into anything. If they're pushing you too hard to do something, that's an alarm bell, in my opinion.
Have you ever had situations where attorneys fight with each other?
You don't mean physically, you mean in...
I mean not physically, of course, under law.
Yeah, it happens to me. It happens a lot of times. I get emotionally involved in what my clients want and where I think my clients are being not treated badly. And there's a lot of, real stray dog lawyers out there that, lie and cheat and try to get things and make stuff up and cause trouble. And, a lot of lawyers you can learn to hate very much. So yes, it happens all the time, and it's usually a bad thing. I try to pull it back. It's not smart and it's not professional as a general rule to really get into it with the other side, but it does happen. And clients should also encourage their lawyers to be tough, but at the same time, not get too emotional about what happens. They need to be a calming influence usually.
I think it is coming from certain people go for law because they have a certain criteria, psychological criteria. For example, they are aggressive, they have a certain temper, or they want to use this lawyer's platform to kind of experience their own relationships in life or temper.
There may be some of that.
Something like that. So I would rather to go with a person who is a decent, with good character and temper,
Always best.
Yes, who can control themselves.
Absolutely, always best.
I noticed that you have a lot of beautiful things, and we are in your office at home, and I love your antique. Could you tell a few words about that, please?
Sure. We love Art Deco. It's my desk, and also the Biedermeier style of furniture that was developed originally in Sweden and Germany in the early 1800s. And then, of course, in Russia, with the beautiful Russian Biedermeier style you see particularly in Petersburg. And so, over the years, it's been collected for now 30-odd years. But yes, we've collected a lot of it. And we like it simple, yet classic, and we like it old. So
I believe that person who very close with art, they enrich themselves on many levels, and probably it helps you to be a good lawyer. And especially if you are in the entertainment business, probably you are very much involved with other arts, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And having good taste and these kinds of things are important in the business because the clients and the people you work with are all sensitive to those things and care about them.
It was a wonderful conversation, and you answered most important questions.
All right.
And
Happy.
thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you,
and
Elena.
If anybody would love to reach out, Peter Hoffman, you will know where to find.
All right, thanks.